Okay. Now let us talk more about the FastAPI. So what exactly is this FastAPI? If you see, FastAPI is the web framework. This is the language that you will see in the official website of FastAPI as well. It's a web framework which has very high performance capability, and it is very recently developed. In 2018, this FastAPI was created or developed by Sebastian, and basically the documentation says that Sebastian did not like the existing web framework, that is Flask and Django, and hence he started to create something on his own. And that's how FastAPI came into existence. The advantage, right? There are a bunch of advantages, like we will be talking about those advantages in the next slide. Is one of the advantages that it is having async feature. Now, what is this async feature? Async is basically speaking about asynchronous or waiting. So the feature allows your application to run multiple programs, right? It allows us to have multiple programs run without waiting for one of the application to complete. That means it's not sequential, you can see. In short, what we are saying is it's not sequential, whereas Flask is sequential. Okay, so that is the advantage that you will get with FastAPI. Parallel operations can run. Then this is also used for deploying. That is what we are going to look at, the machine learning models. It becomes very easy. It's just like Flask. I mean, I really don't see much difference. There are certain benefits in FastAPI, but at the same time, there are certain disadvantages with FastAPI. I'll try and show you the pros and cons as well. We have one specific feature called as pedantic. This is something that your FastAPI is relying on. It uses pedantic. Pedantic is basically a feature you can speak about, which allows the programmers to write the user-friendly. I mean, the development of the code becomes very easy when you have this pedantic. Jupyter notebooks, right? They follow this, or Spider also. Python basically uses this. It allows hints. When you're typing Python code, you will see a lot of hints, right? So that is because of your pedantic features. So it allows you to have more interactivity when you're trying to write your programs. It enforces the hints at runtime, and it also allows us to identify the errors very quickly. And it is also allowing us to verify the data. Data validity is also something it does. Right? So these are some of the benefits that you will see with respect to the FastAPI. So in short, FastAPI is nothing but an application which allows us to create web interfaces or web APIs on your Python code. Now, coming to the features, if I have to talk about the FastAPI features, as we've already discussed, this is very fast. Right? It's considered to be super fast. Compared to Flask, it is much faster. Right? That's what the benchmarking tests have actually proved. So among the three, if you speak about Django, then you have Flask and then FastAPI. FastAPI is considered to be the quickest one, high performance. It is robust. Right? It basically allows you to have a very less bug-free code, which can be directly developed for your production environment. Right? Because of pedantic feature, as we just discussed, it allows you to do a lot of interactive code development. And it in fact does automatic interactive documentation, like we will see now. I'll show you the example also. So once you run your application web framework, you'll also be able to see the documentation. It looks into data validity. That is one of the very important features. Right? It is also called as intuitive. Basically, it was designed to help the developers come up with their programming or come up with their application with ease, which Sebastian, who was the developer of FastAPI, didn't find in Django or your Flask applications, you can see. So it was designed to be easy. That's the primary the objective of having FastAPI. And it also allows you to do a lot of interactive programming like we have sent here. And the documentation, right, is really, really helpful in doing that. So at each line, you will be able to try and validate what is correct, what is not correct, and you can try and correct your code errors, bugs that you're going to get. Then it is very, very compatible. It follows a lot of standards, right? Like you see, open source standards that we look at. OpenAPI is predominantly used. So it works very well with a lot of these standards, global standards that we have. OpenAPI, as I said, is something which is predominantly used by your FastAPI. Of course, JSON schema, right? So these are some of the standards which FastAPI supports. Again, the features are ultimately right, ensuring that the programmer can develop the code very easily. So you can see quick to code, fewer bugs. There are readily available a lot of plugins, the type hints that you see because of the pedantic features. And yeah, ultimately the features are helping us to develop our program with much precision and with more accuracy. And you can also say with better performance. So that is the objective. These are some of the features that your FastAPI has. And if you have to summarize everything, right, the comparison is something that we would like to talk about. I will come back to this example. What exactly is the code doing and all that. This is the code snippet. I will try and explain each and every line here. And right, but before that, let me talk about the comparison between FastAPI and Flask. So if I talk about FastAPI, one of the most important feature that it has is the data validation. It basically allows you to focus on your program, right, your code. It takes care of validating your data automatically. It does that, right? And the disadvantage in Flask is that you don't have that. You can see it. No data validation in Python Flask, right? So whatever the data you can pass, it blindly accepts it, doesn't validate. Whereas FastAPI does the validation. So you cannot just pass any random data. That's the first benefit that you see, data validation. Exception handling, right? With FastAPI, a lot of interactive documentation is available. So it's very easy to deal with your errors, the bugs that you're getting, right? So exception handling can be very effectively be performed in FastAPI. And this is another right, very important feature, asynchronous code support. This allows your FastAPI to have multiple operations being parallel. You don't have to run the application sequentially, right? That's the advantage. Supports async code using this features of Python, async or await. These are Python features, of course. The request validation that you talk about, right? Because it uses this pedantic feature. It is not very comfortable in some of the instances, right? It is not always intuitive. And in order to ensure that the bugs are reduced or the customizations are actually obtained, because of this validation point, though it is treated as an advantage, but in certain cases, the errors might creep in. So you will have to do a lot of custom program in such scenarios. You'll have to write your own validations. This is one drawback that you will see. In certain cases, it becomes a drawback. Depending on your needs, you'll have to do the customization. The Fast API was developed in 2018 and it is slowly catching up. It is not as popular as the libraries of Python, which is Flask and Django. It is slowly picking up, but yes, very aggressively being also picked up. From that perspective, the support is not that effective as if as for that we have for Flask application or for Django application. For these applications, they are very old compared to Fast API, and they're more matured. So support, the contributors are also more, the community is big. So you'll have good support there. Here we will have small support. Now coming to the Flask, it is flexible, right? You can manipulate your Flask applications. That's what it means. Of course, in Fast API also, you'll be able to do that. Intuitive, yeah, this is another feature which is common. Fast API also has the intuitiveness. And this considered to be very good, easy for beginners because of its simplicity. Here, yes, it is also simple, like you'll be looking at Fast API code. But once you see Flask application and once you get used to it, the certain things in Fast API probably might confuse you. But if you're beginning with Fast API and then probably go down to Flask, then you will see that you will be more comfortable in Fast API. Syntaxes wise, not many differences. Both are very similar, right? But it all depends on the intuition and usability. Once you get used to it, you probably tend to feel comfortable in one of these two programs. The built-in development server. This is another advantage that Flask has. So it is also known as your microwave framework, right, service. So this is a built-in functionality, right? And because of this development server, you don't need to have any other additional server supports and all that. You basically get a development server within the Flask API itself, and this allows you to do the testing and all those things very easily. The disadvantage, though, as I already spoke about this point, data validation doesn't happen here. And it is a little time consuming compared to Fast API. The name itself is fast, right? So remember that. This is a single source, right? And the execution happens sequentially, right? Requests in turns, meaning that basically you will have one task to be completed at one time. So it takes a little more time and it doesn't have this async feature to parallelly run the programs. So this is the comparison with respect to Flask and Fast API. Now, if I come back and try and explain the code. Okay, this is a very simple code snippet. In the official document also, you can see this code. This is the famous Hello World code. All we are doing is installing the library. So you will be saying Fast API, right? I mean, like any other library, we will say pip install Fast API. Very simple. You can also say all, so that all the dependencies can also be installed here, right? So that is the pip command. Once it is installed, you will be able to import it using the Fast API import Fast API library. Then we will have the lines of code here. This is a custom function. This is the routing that we are doing, and this is your main application. So let me try and explain what exactly we are doing here. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to say the file name, right? So I'm labeling this file as hello.py. It's a simple Python code. So I will have .py extension, like Flask again. Even for Flask, we have Flask. Your app.py or some file name.py, right? So it's a Python script. So here also it's a Python script that we look at. And the first line of code, let me explain that. the first line of code that we talk about is to import the library, right? Import Flask API. Once this is imported, the second step, this is the code. This is instantiating your model, or you can say API. So we are creating an instance for this class. We are labeling this class as APP. This is my application. I'm giving it a name. I'm not passing any arguments or anything for this API, the application. Default arguments, no arguments in fact. And this is the application that name, right? This is the app name that we will be referring when we start the application. This will route to the operation. This is called as operations. We are doing get operation. What does a get operation means? You can see this is allowing us to read data. So these are different types of operations that we can perform. And this is one of the HTTP methods, the basic ones. There are other operations also, but we are speaking about these 4 for now. So we speak about post. This is to create data. Get is to read the data, right? This is like read underscore CSV if you want to imagine. Then put is basically to update if you have any data. And of course, delete is very straightforward, deleting the data. So these are your basic operations. Here we are doing get operation. Then comes the function that we need to run here. So what happens is the routing is being done here. We are routing the application, the REST API, to the home directory, the root directory. So you'll have the URL, and then you'll have routing, the slash. This is like your endpoint. Okay, so it is basically triggering or routing us to the root function. So this is where we are defining the custom function that we want to execute. Whenever we reach this path, it triggers this custom function. What we are doing here, it's a very simple Python custom function. We are returning a dictionary, which basically says hello world. This is the key and this is the value. So this is a dictionary that we are trying to return when the path is accessed. Right? Very simple commands. We basically, again, if I have to summarize the steps here, you can see we are importing the library, creating an application instance. We are declaring the path using something called as decorator or operator, you can say. Here we are using get operator and the path is root. Then we are defining the function, right? Get function. Here we are basically doing the dictionary return. Once the code is ready, in order to trigger this application, in order to start the server, you use UVCon as the keyword. I mean, this is where your application runs, UVCon. And on UVCon, you're basically calling the file name and then your application. And then you have reload. This is to ensure that the changes are read. This parameter will basically ensure that the server is automatically restarted if there are any changes in your code. You can, this is optional, you can ignore this. You can manually reload if there is any change, if you don't have this. So this is basically how we run. The app is nothing but the application that we have defined here. And the file name, that is your hello. So this is the command that we are running, and this will start your FastAPI server. And this will return the hello world. So this is how your code can be explained. And as we discussed, there are other applications of that operations that will also allow us to deal with. Now, one thing we need to remember is the specific feature of your Fast API is your data validation, right? So it automatically does that. Data validation is something that it automatically